Good evening, members of the 2024 Baltimore-Washington Annual Conference. I am the Reverend Dr. Darrell Williams, the President of this Council of Finance and Administration, and I look forward to preparing you to vote on this year's CFA recommendations that include the proposed 2025 conference budget. I will start our review by taking a close look at the budget assumptions that take into account the recent disaffiliations from 2023 and the post-pandemic recovery that has financially challenged many of our churches. The 2025 budget overview will allow us to see how the proposed budget aligns with our long-term strategies while being balanced by the budget assumptions. I will then complete the presentation by reviewing the CFA recommendations. The first budget assumption that I want to review is the mission share collection rate trends. The collection rate in 2023 dropped to 85%. This is the lowest collection rate for our conference over the last 10 years if you exclude the pandemic influence collection rate in 2020. Even then, it was only the collection rate during the first 6 months of 2020 that caused the collection rate to fall below 87%. Our conference is typically in support of our connectional budget with collection rates that are 90% or higher. So, as we bring this budget before the annual conference, it is being done in a way that recognizes that we are at a turning point. We must stem the decline in our collection rate, and we appreciate the work of each local church as we prioritize this work in our stewardship committees. To recognize the need for us to make this turn and reset a strong financial base for our conference ministries, we are once again setting the budgeted collection rate at 87% in the 2025 budget. Obtaining that goal will be a good sign of recovery for all of us to celebrate. The second budget assumption that I want to review is the mission share base trends. The mission share base keeps track of the aggregated level of expenses that are paid by all of our local churches for the pastor and staff's compensation, program expenses, and operating expenses. It does not include the missional work of the church, the clergy benefits, or the capital expenses paid by a church. The 2025 budget uses the mission share base that is calculated from the most recently completed 2023 statistical data. Overall, the mission share base in 2023 decreased from $82.8 million to $80.7 million for a 2.4% decline. Within that decline, there were two major factors. The 23 churches that disaffiliated in 2023 accounted for a 4.9% decline in the mission share base. This was offset by the 2.6% increase in local church expenses for the continuing churches. The listing at the bottom of this slide indicates that most of that increase was driven by a 5% increase in local church operating expenses, while the aggregated pastor and staff compensations stayed relatively flat. This leads us to the calculation of the 2025 mission share income. This is the calculated amount that will be allocated to each of our local churches to support our connectional budget. The calculation takes the aggregated mission share base that we described in our last slide as $80.7 million. It multiplies this by the benevolence factor that we are proposing to drop slightly to 17.4%. And the calculation also factors in the collection rate assumption of 87%. The proposed mission shares from this calculation is then $12.2 million in the 2025 budget. This is a decrease in the mission shares of $342,000 or 2.7% from the current budget. Our next slide allows us to see the mission share budget as it compares to our prior budgets. The reduction in the benevolence factor is the second straight year that a reduction has been made. The proposed 17.4% marks a continuation of the long-term goal to reduce this aspect of our budget that directly impacts local churches. The bottom graph shows how the proposed $12.2 million mission share budget continues the glide path towards the desired $12 million budget in 2026 or 2027. As we make this proposal, I want you to also know that we track the mission share budget against the total income that is reported by local churches in the annual statistics. In 2023, the mission share budget was 11.2% of the total reported income. This is very close to the 11.1% average that we have maintained since 2013. Our forecasts show that this 2025 budget proposal will reduce the mission share budget to 10.6% of the total church income. It is this analysis of the budget that gives us confidence that the continuing churches within our conference are not being asked to cover the contributions of the mission shares previously paid by the disaffiliated congregations. In fact, as we continue to work together to improve the overall collection rate within the conference, it is anticipated that this will provide even further reductions in this metric. We look forward to turning the corner as we strengthen that aspect of our connection. This brings me to the overview of the 2025 budget. As I review each line, we see on the top line that the mission shares are being reduced from $12.56 to $12.22 million. At the same time, other income is being increased on the next line by $570,000. This makes the total income $18.3 million in the 2025 budget. This is slightly more than the $18.1 million budget for 2024. In the next section, we see that the expenses for the regions and ministry teams are being reduced by $223,000. This is primarily from the reduction of general church apportionments. The stewardship area is being increased by $451,000 or 6.5% to cover some increases in retiree medical expenses and general operating expenses. It is significant to note in this budget proposal that non-mission share income sources now support 33% of the overall budget. These sources come primarily from reserves that are paying for 100% of the retiree medical and conference mortgage expenses. We also know that the closed church funds are now being used for slightly more than 60% of the grants made to churches through the Unified Funding Task Force. In comparison, we see at the bottom of this slide that the amount of the non-mission share income was only 25% in 2020. And if we go back to 2009, the non-mission share income was only 17% of a slightly smaller overall budget. The long-term focus to provide funding from sources other than mission shares has played an important role in the sustainability of our ministries within the conference. As I close out the review of the 2025 budget, we are encouraged to be able to provide a budget that continues to align with the long-term glide path to reduce the mission share budget to $12 million in 2026 or 2027. As you study the proposed budget, you will notice that the general church apportionments are being reduced by 17% based on the 2024 General Conference proposed budget. This is a reduction of $506,000 from $3 million to $2.5 million. The 2025 budget will continue to introduce trustee funds from the sale of closed churches to now support $722,000 of the $1.1 million allocated to the Unified Funding Local Church Grants. We are very excited to incorporate a new youth event into this budget for March of 2025. The budget also provides a 3% increase in staff salary and benefits. This brings me to the final slide that lists our CFA recommendations. 1. We propose that the 2025 budget be established at $18,335,186, with mission shares set at $12,223,047. Number 2, we propose that the 2025 benevolence factor be reduced to 17.4% with a collection rate of 87%. Number 3, the proposed budget conforms to the Book of Discipline allocation of 33% for world service and the remainder allocated to the conference and general church benevolences. Number 4, the CFA has contracted Ellen & Tucker to conduct the 2024 audit. Number 5, in concurrence with the opinion of our auditors, we propose closing the 2024 financial books on January 14, 2025. And finally, number 6, as is our practice, we ask that you grant authority to CFA in consultation with the bishop, the cabinet, the discipleship council, to act on financial matters between the sessions of the annual conference. On behalf of the council, I thank you for your attention, and I also thank the bishop for allowing me this time to address the annual conference. Thank you.